Carl Jung said, "You are not weak. You are just distracted from your own strength." And when we stop to feel the weight of these words, something stirs inside us, like a very old voice, one we have always tried to ignore, beginning to whisper again. Think with me. How many times have you looked in the mirror and thought you weren't enough? That maybe you were born missing something? Or that other people succeed because they are stronger, more capable, more enlightened than you? But what if your weakness was actually a kind of amnesia? What if you haven't lost your strength? You've just forgotten where it is. Jung believed that human beings carry inside themselves forces so great that they can't even imagine. But we get distracted, we get lost. We spend our whole lives trying to please others, trying to fit in, trying to play roles. And in this silent process, we erase parts of who we really are. Our strength turns into silence, turns into shadow, turns into absence. And the scariest part is that we don't even notice. We don't see the strength leaving because it never left. It just hid behind masks we learned to wear. Are we really weak? Or just disconnected from what truly moves us? Are we really lost? Or only distracted by noises that have nothing to do with our essence? Why are we so afraid to look inside? Why is it easier to live a tired life than an authentic life? Carl Jung said that what we avoid the most is exactly where our strength lives. But who among us has had the courage to face it head on? This is where our search begins. Not to become someone better, but to remember who we always were. First, what weakens us most of the time is not the lack of something, but the layers that cover us and pull us away from our true self. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, admired, and understood. This persona is a social construction, a character we create, often since childhood, just to fit in the world. We quickly learn that some feelings are ugly, that showing pain is weakness, that feeling anger is wrong, that dreaming big is arrogance, that saying no is selfish. So, we hide, we repress, we shape ourselves. But Jung said that everything we repress doesn't disappear. It goes to the unconscious. It builds up there in what he called the shadow. The shadow is everything you are, but don't have the courage to accept. And the more you try to run away from it, the weaker you feel. Because denying your shadow is like cutting your own roots. The truth is, our strength is not only in the pretty, socially accepted parts of who we are. It's mainly in what we hide. It's in the anger that can turn into courage. It's in the fear that can become wisdom. It's in the sadness that can transform into compassion. It's in the impulses that, if embraced, can turn into creativity, leadership, freedom. But why is it so hard to see this? Because we were trained to see life as opposites, right or wrong, light or dark, good or bad. But Jung said the human soul is a meeting of opposites. Healing only happens when you embrace everything you are, not just what looks good. And as long as we try to be only light, we'll feel weaker and weaker. Because light without shadow is a lie. It's only half, and living half is exhausting. You know that feeling of always being tired, even without much physical effort. Carrying a weight you can't explain? That's the effort of holding up a mask that wasn't born with you. True weakness is born from this conflict. What you feel versus what you show. What you need versus what you allow. What you want versus what the world expects. And the saddest part is that this distance becomes so common that we forget there is another way to live. We actually believe that this lack of strength is natural, that this emptiness is part of life, that this tiredness is normal. But it's not. It's just distraction. It's just disconnection. It's just a deep forgetting of who you really are. And that's why meeting your own shadow is not a threat. It's the way back home. But what happens when we forget this for too long? What happens when this disconnection becomes routine? That's what we're going to find out now. Maybe you have already noticed. There is something that has been quietly following you. It doesn't hurt in a loud way, but it weighs on you every day. A feeling that you are always running after something you never reach. An emptiness that you try to fill with distractions, achievements, acceptance, but that never feels complete. Jung called this feeling the alienation of the soul, and this has nothing to do with religion or spirituality in the traditional sense. It's something deeper. It's when you live disconnected from yourself, trying to follow a script that was never yours. We wake up, work, do tasks, try hard to please, try to be positive, try to handle everything. And yet, deep down, we feel that something is missing. But what exactly? The answer lies in an invisible pattern that shapes the lives of almost all of us. Conditioning. From early on, we learn to value what is approved and to hide what is condemned. Culture tells us that being strong means not feeling, that success means standing out, that happiness means having control. But Jung showed that this is a dangerous illusion. When you live only to meet external expectations, your soul starts to shrink. And do you know what's worse? You don't even notice. That is the real danger. You keep adapting, adjusting, making yourself smaller. And over time, you can't even tell the difference between what you truly want and what is just a reflection of what others expect. You feel like you have to be good, but no longer know what it means to be whole. And this doesn't show up clearly. It appears in sudden anxiety attacks, in constant irritation without a clear reason, in emotional tiredness that doesn't go away even after sleeping, in the difficulty of making simple decisions, in the insecurity that stops your dreams before they start. All of this are symptoms of a stifled soul, and when this disconnection lasts for years, it becomes a lens. You start to see life as something hard, heavy, threatening, not because life really is like that, but because you lost your center, lost touch with your most genuine strength. Jung said, "What you resist persists," and that is exactly what happens. The more you avoid your pain, the more it finds ways to make itself present. It sneaks into your relationships, your decisions, your deepest fears. And every time you pretend everything is fine, a part of you falls silent. But the good news is that this prison is not forever. It is fragile. It depends on your distraction to keep existing. And just one step of awareness is enough for the bars to start falling apart. The question now is, how do we escape from this? How do we break this cycle and find the way back home? The answer lies in an act of courage, the rebellion against everything that made us forget who we are. There comes a moment when the pain of pretending becomes greater than the fear of being who we really are. And that is when the rebellion begins. But this is not a loud rebellion against the outside world. It doesn't involve shouting, attacking, or proving anything to anyone. It is silent, almost invisible on the outside, but inside us, it feels like everything starts to shake. Carl Jung said that the process of individuation, the true awakening of the soul, begins when we stop following what others expect from us and start following what life is asking from within. It is when we get tired of living on autopilot. It is when we begin to doubt our own thoughts, to question our own fears. It is when, instead of running away from the shadow, we decide to sit with it. And here the transformation begins. Imagine a person who has spent their whole life trying to please, always saying yes, even when they wanted to say no, always smiling, even when everything inside was broken, until one day they collapse. And in that collapse, they find a space of silence. They can't take it anymore. And that is exactly why they start to change. They begin to say what they think. They begin to own what they feel. They start to show up with more truth, even if it displeases others. Little by little, that perfect image begins to fall away, and in place of the persona, the real self emerges. This person might seem more imperfect in the eyes of others. They might seem rougher, more intense, full of flaws, but for the first time, they are whole. And when they begin to embrace their own shadow, they discover that darkness wasn't a monster. It was just a forgotten part of themselves, asking to be seen. Jung said that integrating the shadow is the hardest path, but also the most freeing. Because it is in this process that we reconnect with our original strength. It is not the strength of control, nor the strength of a beautiful image, nor the strength of social acceptance. It is the strength of being whole. It is the strength to look in the mirror and say, "This is me, all of me, and even so, I am enough." The rebellion is not about becoming someone else. It is about stopping hiding. It is about stopping adapting to a life that suffocates. And it is at this point on the path that everything changes. You stop comparing yourself. Stop chasing after things. Stop waiting for permission. You simply walk with more lightness, with more truth, with more presence. This is the strength that has always been inside you, but was asleep after so many years of distraction. And now that it begins to awaken, what will be possible? What happens when you no longer have to pretend anything? That is when we get closer to the deepest truth of all, a revelation that changes everything. In the end, it wasn't about becoming someone different. It wasn't about conquering fear, eliminating insecurity, or silencing doubt. It was about learning to walk with all of that, without losing yourself in the process. Carl Jung warned us, what we deny in ourselves ends up controlling us from outside. And when we finally understand this, something opens inside us. A new way of being begins to emerge. It doesn't come from outside. It doesn't depend on applause. It doesn't seek approval. It comes from within, from a quiet place that has always been there. But we can only hear it when the noise of distraction starts to fade. The greatest realization is not about being perfect. It is about being whole. Being whole means accepting that you have light and shadow, courage and fear, desire and insecurity, and that all of this is part of the same being, a being worthy of love, respect, and presence. We spent too much time trying to fix our flaws as if they were the problem. But the truth is that the pain we feel doesn't come from the wrong parts we carry. It comes from the constant effort to hide them. That is where our energy dies. That is where existential crises, anxiety, and emptiness are born. But when we look tenderly at what we have avoided for so long, when we say yes to who we really are, without trying to fix everything, without trying to prove anything, something extraordinary happens. The soul begins to breathe again. You start walking through life with more lightness, not because the problems disappeared, but because now you are no longer fighting against yourself. You begin to attract people who truly see you, not by the mask you used to wear, but by the authenticity that now shines from within. You begin to realize that everything you desperately searched for outside, love, acceptance, peace, belonging, was all along inside you, waiting for you to remember. And here lies the miracle. Not a miracle falling from the sky, but a miracle born when you come back to yourself. When you stop running, stop pretending, stop distracting yourself, and simply allow yourself to feel. You realize you were never weak, never insufficient, never broken. You were just distracted from your own strength. And now that it has awakened, what will you do with it? This is not a question to answer quickly. It is a question to live, day by day, choice by choice. Because true freedom is not in changing who you are. It is in remembering, with courage, who you have always been. And if your soul could speak right now, perhaps it would say, "Finally, you have come home." If this message touched your heart in some way, if it made you think, remember who you really are, or even notice something that was hidden inside you, then I warmly invite you to subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot to keep spreading reflections that awaken the soul. If you liked the video, leave your like. It's a simple but powerful way to say, this message was worth it. And if you want, share in the comments. What moved you the most? What made you stop and think? I would love to read about your experience. And who knows, your words might light something in someone else too. We're in this journey together.